Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the moments people had to let go of a destructive pattern, limiting identity, and the internal battle in order to rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. Today's guest is Peter Gunn, 20 years our US uh, Air Force veterans, bodybuilders, guitarist, and international band, the Angelic poet, author, and creator of the Link lyrical poetry, a modern evolution of epic storytelling designed to awaken, provoke, and endure. Peter's story began at 7 years old with a near-death experience during a heated stroke that redirected his sense of purpose. Thrown through overcoming morbid childhood obesity. At 12, 2 decades of honorary military service, at the birth of a daughter who made him notice what was missing in the stories he loved, and the COVID era creative explosion that produced the Amazon series and the Stigma Squad. His turning point from the Air Force came when the mandatory vaccine policy crossed the personal line he was not willing to cross. 20 years of service and a clear moment where staying was no longer an option. It's really a pleasure and honor having you on the show, Peter.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, Peter, you had a near-death experience at 7 years old during the heated stroke, an encounter you describe as redirecting your life purpose towards service and impact. What do you remember of that particular experience, and how did it shape the person you were becoming, even as a child?
Mine was different, because I've read extensively on the subject. And everyone meets their aunt, their uncle, their father, their mother. Some say they met Jesus when they were there. Mine was quite different. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was treated like I was the help. Okay, like I went in a side entrance to heaven, and then like, oh wait a minute, you're still on clock. What are you doing here? I was treated like that. I met angels, okay? I didn't meet Jesus. I didn't meet any loved ones. I met angels. And when I saw an angel that confronted me, he said, "Your job isn't done. You have to go back." I recognized him. So my NDE was odd. Like I said, perhaps I'm the help. I was sent back here to help. But yeah, I was not. I know for a fact I was not sent into the front entrance of heaven. I was to the side for the help.
Yeah. Oh, that was really quite an experience. The fact that, yeah, at that particular age, being sent out and you remembering visibly, and the fact that, yeah, make reference of service that you are not yet done. That's really a whole lot. So you overcome that childhood obesity at 12 through discipline and transformation. The kind of physical rebuilding at the age is extraordinary. What did that process teach you about what you were capable of, and how did it show up later in everything from military service to bodybuilding to creative work?
Well, when I was 12 years old, I was 230 pounds, and I'm only 5'3". So I'm not the tallest guy out there, and I was quite big for a child. So I had a big decision. So I eventually started to work out, and I started going to the gym when I was 16, when I was, legally allowed to. And then I actually fell in love with bodybuilding. And that's one of the things that majorly changed my life at that time, because it appealed to me in a creative process, be able to shape and mold the human body as if it were a piece of clay. So, and it's not instant gratification. It takes years to do this. So, but I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. To this day, I go to the gym just about every day. I'm 50 years old. Yeah.
Oh, wow, such regulars and such discipline. Yeah, it's amazing. So you have 20 years in the US Air Force, an entire adult life given to the institution. What did 2 decades of that service give you, and what did it cost you in a way that were only visible from the outside looking back?
Well, it gave me a close personal view of the world, since I got to travel a lot. I mean, honestly, I've probably seen about 2/3 of the world out there right now. It's gotten me around to meet just about everybody and everything, and it had me realize that we're all the same. We all want to be left alone. Live in peace, grow our families, and just be ourselves. We don't want war. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants war. Nobody does. You know, it also, you didn't realize that when you're in service to your country, at least in the U.S. Military, you put yourself secondly. In other words, the Air Force or the duty to the military always has to come first. So projects like the Amazon, projects like Cinema Squad, projects like I'm working on right now with my new book, always have to come secondary. So I put basically my life on hold for 20 years to serve the American people. And a lot of people don't realize that. You know, they think, oh, you could do it while you're in the service. When you're working 12, 16-hour days, no, that makes it a bit difficult.
Yeah, yeah, really, really a whole lot. And thank you for all you do. So the mandatory vaccine policy was the line you would not cross. After 20 years of service, 20 years of following order and institutional loyalty of the nation, what made that specific moment the one you said no to?
Well, I was forcibly retired back in 2021 when I refused to take the COVID vaccine. You know, honestly, I probably would still be in uniform if I that hadn't happened. But it made me realize that it's time for me now. It's time for me to go do what I need to do. It's you're not supposed to follow orders that could put anyone in danger. You know, that are above and beyond the so you say the power that the officer has. And they were giving an untested vaccine to the U.S. military. Now they just came out in media and said, yes, they were in the wrong and they were allowing people back in. But, you know, at the time, they did threw a lot of people out because of COVID, but I refused to take that stuff and allow it in my body. So I honestly, it was a blessing in disguise. It was a blessing in disguise. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So when your daughter was born out in 2010, you noticed the family perspective was absent from the hero's journey in the stories you love. Most people notice gap like that's move on. What made you decide to feel it? And what did creating the Amazons series and link lyrical poetry require of you? Writing existing form would never have.
Well, whenever you have children, you always want to somehow enroll them into things that you love to see if, they catch on. Every parent does that,
Yeah.
and I had always loved the classics, Il Diasi, Homer and Dante's Inferno, Beowulf, and of course, when my daughter was getting of age, I started collecting those books little by little. But then I started to realize, like, wait a minute, why would a young girl want to read this? What's in this for her? Usually it's forcibly assigned to the kids in school, so they have to read it, or something like that. But would they read it of their own tuition? Would they want to read it? Would a young girl, what would she see in this story if she read the Iliad, the Odyssey? She would see Helena Troy being beautiful, but is that the true value of a woman? If you look at Beowulf, the female is a demon slash dragon. So I mean, it's like it's not painting a very favorable viewpoint of women in society, and the fact that they, for the most part, were left out of the hero's journey. It's almost like saying to our mothers or daughters or sisters, like, you're not worthy of it. So I felt it wrong, and that's why I just decided to create the Amazons, is to not only roll the feminine in the hero's journey, give young girls someone a hero that they can look up to, but then also incorporate the masculine in a way that where they work as a synergy together. So if you read the Amazons, there's a queen Amazon, and she has a half brother who is also a male human, and they work in synergy together throughout the book. And of course, it's going to be a trilogy. I'm working on the second one is now, but it's a much more, shall we say, all-encompassing way of focusing on the hero's journey versus the old school ways.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, such a lovely, more like way to actually get to go when you discover that, yeah, what been presented could actually more like give a true picture of what you wanted to do. Yeah, amazing. Thank you for doing what you do. And COVID became a creative turning point. Wow. For you, you describe watching a word you saw as sleep and responding by launching your most ambitious project. What does it mean to respond to collective disorientation with mythology and art rather than commentary or analysis? So COVID became a creative turning point for you. You describe watching a word you saw as
Yes, yes,
asleep
yes.
and responding by
Well, you saw everybody quickly don a mask without question. Did we not? Everyone did it, whether they liked that, but they did it. But like, very few stood up to it. And there again, I stood up to refusing to take the COVID vaccine, and like it made me realize just how asleep people were in the world. And it's sort of scared because I always like to think of best of humanity, but that's why I decided to start the Sigma Squad graphic novel series. It's actually taking me, it's going to be almost 3 years by the time it's done to finish this 200 page graphic novel. It's going to be out this summer, but it's going to help wake people up to what's going on behind the scenes of the U.S. government. It's going to hypothesize, what if there was a rogue agency in the world that was running the show? What if there were quote unquote elites that were pulling the strings behind the scenes? And it's going to pose that in the form of a graphic novel. I mean, it's not going to necessarily call it out outright, but it's going to put sparks of knowledge there that maybe hopefully it will start people critical thinking, like maybe this could take place, in the form of an enjoyable story.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing. So you blend also ancient Gnostic text, epic poetry, bodybuilding discipline, military structure, and the modern music into a single creative picture. What is the true line? What is the thing that connect all of these words for you at the deepest level?
To support humanity, okay, to help them bring them up a level to where they need to be. Whether it's recognizing the role of the feminine, whether it's recognizing that people need to step up and believe in themselves, or whether it's recognizing people like and I have another book coming out too called the Ascension Paradox, which is going to demystify human suffering. But basically, that's the same thing: is breaking humanity to a point to where they can help themselves. They understand, help themselves, and bring them up to where they need to be.
Hmm. Yeah, understand themselves and bring them back to where they ought to be. Yeah, that was really, really critical. It's really amazing. Also, you experienced something at 7 that most people never experience. A glimpse of what lies beyond ordinary consciousness. How has that shaped your relationship with mortality, purpose, and the urgency behind everything you create?
Well, we're all connected. Okay. I could honestly say I'm you in another life or another alternate timeline if you want to look at it that way, but we're all connected. When we pass, when you pass and I pass, all going to be of the same source. So your experience is going to turn to my experience is going to turn to your experience. We're all one, we're all connected. I cannot do what I do without you, and vice versa. And we need to stop looking at it as separation, really. Just because you don't instantly see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. People need to start looking or thinking about things, a bigger picture beyond their lifetimes. Because you're going to come back. You're going to continue to exist after your human lifetime. Or should we say this incarnation of it?
Yeah, we all need each other. Yeah, that's really amazing. So you are building what you call the modern mentor, designed not just to entertain, but to provoke, awaken, and endure. What does endure means to you? What does a work of art has to do or to be at last at the moments it was created in?
It's well, my art is basically to awaken people. To put symbolism in it. Like if you look in any of the album covers, that we put out for the Angelics, if you look closely, you'll be able to see symbolism. If you listen to the words of the music and not just the melody, you're going to hear verses and concepts put in there purposely to awaken people. Because I feel it's my purpose, as the angel said to me. I have an angelic mandate now to do my job is to help wake up humanity for this time.
Yeah, awaken humanity for this time. That's really intriguing. So for someone who has been giving years, maybe decades to an institution or a path that has now asked something of them they cannot give, what do you want them to hear about what comes after the decision?
Well, it's no man is an island and entire of himself, to quote the poet Don Juan. So any decision you make has it affected someone else. Whether it's you're not what you're going to have for dinner, or like I always use the shopping cart theory. Or I guess in other parts of the world you guys call them buggies. Okay, there's three decisions at that point after you use that cart. You could, one, leave it there by the car. Two, put it back, or three, bring it back to the store. And each one shows a different level of consciousness. If you leave it there by your car, the wind can pick it up and push it into another car, thus increasing the insurance rates for everybody else. Okay?
Hmm.
If you put it away,
Yeah.
yes, you're thinking about us as a group, but then there's still some young man that has to go pick up that cart and bring it to the store. So then the next level, the highest level of consciousness, that would be then if you put it away for that, you were not only thinking about all of us, but that young man as well that has to pick it up, and you brought it back to the store yourself. So there's three different decisions and that one little thing. And you think nothing of it every day. You just go about your business. But there's three different ways you could think about that. What
Hmm.
are you doing when you go to the store with your buggy, with your cart?
Amazing. They just speak volumes. So every decision you make, yeah, it's going to be in the three categories. Looking at this from that very way, make it more thoughtful while taking actions to see how it affects, yeah, your core neighbors and yeah, every others. Amazing. So you created an entirely new forms of poetry, ink, lyrical poetry, as a writing within existing tradition. What does that kind of creative courage require, and what do most people talk themselves out of? That you refuse to.
Well, I often joke I'm jealous of normal writers because, they'll say, "Oh, I put out 3 pages," or "I put out 10 pages." The other day I'm like, "Oh, that's great. I have a paragraph." Because you write the story with like lyrical poetry, but that's great. Imagine putting years of work into a story, like, and then the publisher says, "Oh, that's awesome. Good job," and
Yeah.
pats you on the back. It's like, now you're gonna have to make the entire thing rhyme. So back to the drawing board. Back to the drawing boards. You have to make it rhyme. Changing words around. Sometimes the rhyme will write the story. Because that's the only way I can make it work. There are plenty of times where I'll write for hours, but then only get one good paragraph. So it's just one of those things you have to take upon yourself. It's she's a demanding mistress if you're going to go down that road and actually do it. Different.
So for someone listening now who has a creative vision, they have been deferring, waiting for the permission, waiting for the right time, waiting until life settles. What do you want them to hear from a man who has already lived several lifetimes of waiting and building?
Well, don't wait. Don't wait. You start today. Start right now. I mean, anybody that has a normal life has a 9 to 5 job. So for the most part, you're going to have the standard lunch hour. So ask yourself, could you take 15 minutes, 30 minutes of that lunch hour and start writing that novel you want to write, or to start doing research for that book you want, or that topic you want to write about? You have the time, you just don't see it. You could utilize it better.
Yeah, you have the time. You just have to use it better. So lastly, looking across all of it, what do you understand now about service, sacrifice, purpose, and what a life well spent actually look like?
Well, I realized that that's what really matters in life. I mean, you could have $1 million in the bank, but we all know that doesn't make you happy because you just want more. It's like being on the hedonic treadmill. It's always more and more and more and more. But if you lead this life having made a purpose, it's like saved a person's soul. Who could put a price on a human soul? Honestly, if you save people's lives, that's what's really valuable in life. Yeah.
Yeah, you can save people's life. That's the most valuable thing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you for sharing your heart with us on this particular episode. So, for my audience who would love to connect with you, who would love to read your works, the theologies, and the various ones coming into being, how can they reach out? At where's the best platform?
You could go to www.petergunn.net, or you could go to your favorite music app and type in the Angelics, Angellics, and you could seek out our album from there.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for bringing this rare combination of discipline, vision, and creative courage to quit zone. Yeah, you're reminded that the line you will not cross is not a weakness, but a declaration of who you are. And the greatest service a person can render is sometimes the arts they build after the institution is one this or this is going to carry. And from all this, if this sparks something in you, share this episode with a veteran or a creator or anyone that has given everything to something and is wondering what they are building towards now. This conversation is for them. Remember, you were not placed here to fit inside the story someone else wrote. You were placed here to write one that deals. Once again, the pleasure and honor. Have you on the show, Peter.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.